Okay.
Uh-oh.
Okay, now we have to be serious.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Okay. I'm consenting to being recorded.
Oh, they're right here.
All right. So it's almost 4:05 or the 5-minute mark. So as everyone got the notification, we're going to be recording this call to put on YouTube. We'd love for everyone to turn on their videos so that our panel can see who they're talking to, but only if you consent to being recorded and put on YouTube. We're gonna make you famous. But
I feel it's fine too.
yeah, definitely no pressure at all. But we'll go ahead and get started. I think some other people will join us today, but thank you everyone for joining us. This will be the UChicago CollegeSide Chat panel discussion. First and foremost, we hope everyone's doing healthy and well. The pandemic is affecting communities across the world, and we wanted to start this project to bring people together and also to help the class of 2024 make a more informed college decision and also create a sense of community as well.
So we hope that this fireside chat will provide a glimpse into life at UChicago and an opportunity to hear our panelists' stories and experiences. This discussion will be an hour long, and the first half will be your panel answering previously submitted questions, while the second half will be an open discussion.
So we're going to kick things off with our panelists introducing themselves with their names, pronouns, hometowns, years, majors, and the first thing that they're going to do once quarantine is over. And we can start with Esther.
All right. There's a lot of stuff to introduce myself by, so this might take me a sec. Hi, my name's Esther Wang. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm from San Jose, California, so I'm from the Bay Area. We're all seniors, just saying this now. We're all the class of 2020. I'm a biological sciences major with a specialization in immunology. And the first thing I'm going to do when the quarantine's over, I love food, so I'm probably just gonna eat out. Also, congrats to everyone who's been accepted. We really hope you do come here. UChicago is great. Look forward to seeing you all. All right, who's next? Isabel.
Next is Belle.
Hello. My thoughts. Hi, I'm Belle Russo. My pronouns are she, hers, her. I'm a global studies major, and as Esther mentioned, a senior. I'm from New York City, and the first thing I will probably do is when I go home, as we're still in Chicago, is to get a New York slice of pizza.
Pizza sounds good. Should I just say who's next? Nikolai, let's go.
I'm Nikolai, or Nicholas. Wait, I didn't test my mic. Can you hear me?
We can hear
You
you.
sound great.
Brilliant. So I'm a senior, as we all are. I'm from Wayzata, Minnesota. Pronouns are he, him, his. Not going exactly in the order. I study public policy in Russian and Eastern European studies. And the first thing I want to do after quarantine, I don't know, I've been lining up to travel various places during my spring quarter, but those plans were put on hold.
Thanks, Nikolai.
Jane. Also a fourth year, I study sociology and public policy, and I was briefly a philosophy minor, but I'll talk about it later. And I think, my hometown is in Orange County, California, and that's where I am right now. And I think the first thing that I'll be doing once quarantine is over is go to the beach, because I technically can, but I feel bad.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric. Pronouns are he, him, his. Hometowns, San Francisco, like Bay Area most recently, but originally born in Ohio. I studied, I'm a senior, but I graduated last year, so I'm 1 year out technically. Major was economics, and the first thing I want to do when the quarantine is over, probably like Nikolai said, like go traveling somewhere, maybe take advantage of some cheap flight tickets.
Awesome. And Michelle and I will be the co-moderators, and we're not UChicago students, but we're the co-founders of CollegeSide Chats. So now that you've gotten a glimpse of who our panelists are, we're going to begin with the most commonly asked questions that we compiled from the Google Forms. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions through there. We won't be able to get through every single one of them for the sake of time. However, some of the panelists will be sharing their emails afterwards. So if you're interested in reaching out to them individually, we'll send that in the follow-up email. But the first question is, how have you changed the most in college, and how has UChicago influenced that change? And we'll begin with Esther.
So I think I've changed a little differently compared to a lot of the people from my high school who went to like different colleges. But I think the main way in which I've changed is I think I've really seen how passionate students here are about like the subjects they love. Like Isabel's learning about like the militarization of bees, which I always bring up as an example. And I think that's just like so cool. And everyone has like this kind of like niche or broad, like, but like everyone has this really cool like interest and like this thing that they're intensely passionate about that like you can learn so much about just from talking to them over like dinner or something. And I think that's really been like contagious for me, getting to hear about all these different students, like really cool research projects and interests and things like that. I guess it's made me want to become someone who has like a passion in life and be able to like pursue that passion as part of my future career. That's all.
I think I'm the next respondent. So really going off of what Esther just said, I had interests in high school and they were largely related to urbanism and urban planning, but I think going to UChicago has really helped me discover more of those interests, so that they become passions and that they become like actionable goals to pursue in life. Before UChicago, I kind of really saw the world in like very black and white terms. But now I see like there's no like boxes of social reality anymore. It's like I see through them, and I feel like I see the world in so much more like colorful light, if that makes sense. And I attribute a lot of that to the UChicago education I've received and just all of the different ways that the classes have challenged me to think all different directions, all different disciplines. And so I have academic and personal interest now than I did in high school, and it's because like UChicago has helped me think a lot more deeply about just everything in life, and that's what changed the most about me.
All right, thank you for all your answers. The next question that we have is, describe UChicago's student culture and academic climate.
Yep, so I can start with this one. I think maybe one of the most useful things to do would be to dispel some of the myths about UChicago culture, because they're like pretty prevalent and I think widely known. Right, UChicago is known as like the place where fun goes to die. It's super boring. Everyone's super academically focused and stressed. I think in reality and in practice, we're definitely not like a Big Ten school, right? Like we don't have like a huge sports culture. People are not lining up out the gates to go to a football game here by any means. But I also think it's a place where like the culture is not monolithic, right? And I think that's true for any college campus. There is like, you can create kind of whatever social or academic culture that you want to, kind of regardless of the school you go to. I think on average, you will find people here who are more academic, who like having intellectual like conversations, who maybe like aren't the first to go to a football game. But like, there are always exceptions to the rule. And I think you can really kind of build whatever culture here that you want. And there's definitely not one prevailing social norm. And I think that allows for a lot of freedom to kind of create your desired college experience.
Yeah, I think that was a really good summation of what my experience here has been as well. There's not one culture, and I think that there's a lot of room here to make new friends and meet a lot of people through a lot of different facets of your life. People are really passionate about their extracurriculars. That's where I've met a lot of my friends, people, in classes. And I think also the school does do a good job of creating a support system. So first year when I came in, you're assigned to a house and like people in my house genuinely sat together, which I think is a pretty consistent experience across the board. And I think also just your social network expands even more as time goes on here. And I think it's actually been a really fun place to be.
Sure. So going third, I think everyone has hit a lot of the main points. I only have two additions to make. One is I push back and say it is pretty academic as an environment. I've been to other colleges, and people at UChicago are interested in school, and they do school and they're good at school. And that's part of the UChicago experience. However, the flip side of that is in recent years, just to sort of shifting demographics and admissions trends, UChicago is becoming more normal. And I think that's like sort of an empirical fact, which means there is a greater sort of diversity in what is available for you in sort of the culture you want on campus, in that, UChicago is one of the few places in the US where Greek life is actually growing rather than shrinking. But at the same time, you still have the very much like countless nerdy extracurriculars that you can get involved with. And again, people do go to UChicago because they're good and interested at school.
Great, thank you, panelists, for your for your answers. So the next one we have is, what do you recommend for choosing courses in the first semester of your first year? Should first years focus more on breadth requirements or go straight into their prospective majors? And we'll begin with Zarek.
Yeah, so definitely one of the bigger constraints for, I think, course flexibility is that UChicago has the core, right? On math, physical sciences. But my strong recommendation for people who are looking at their course selections is to try to build some flexibility into that early on. And I think that's generally not the tendency, because people try to get the requirements kind of out of the way. But exploring major courses and kind of fitting them in here and there where you can, it can be really valuable and can help you build a sense of like what kind of like your true interests might be, right? Both intellectually and academically, just kind of in life. And so trying to get as broad exposure as you can with those constraints, I think, is really important. And I think it's also important to remember that the core can help you explore those interests. So some of the standard courses, it will expose you to something that you hadn't thought of previously that you actually might be really interested in. And so I think just kind of keeping an open mind and definitely going for breadth when possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with Zarek. I think one thing I've regretted about the last 4 years is that instead of really getting to explore during my core, I think I kind of stuck to the things that I knew the best. And I guess I would encourage you all, like, first semester, kind of choose core requirements like humanities and arts that you're really interested in. One of my favorite classes here was actually doing my art core, which was on images. And I got to paint, and like we got to like exhibit our work like once every like 2-3 weeks, and kind of detail like what they mean and like what we think about them, and things like that. So for the first and second year, I think, I don't know if you guys will all agree with me, but I felt like there was kind of like a set few classes that the college like wanted you to take during your first 2 years. And that made it slightly easier for choices, and just having that like structure to the first year, and just not coming in and being like, oh my God, like what do I take? There's like a billion classes, was really great. So honestly, I would encourage you all like first semester to really focus on choosing like core classes that really interest you, something you haven't done before. It's kind of fun.
I would echo the sentiments of the previous two respondents, and I want to remind people who are going to UChicago that you can take 12 classes, or if you're crazy, like you can take up to 15 classes in a year. That's a lot. And that gives you a lot of flexibility to do both. You can take core classes and you can explore your major. I personally chose to get most of my core requirements out of the way, and by spring quarter I was comfortable diving into non-core classes, and then by second year was when I really started to dive into like different major offerings that were available. But I recently had a conversation with a first year who was trying to cram as many core requirements as possible into his first year. And I reminded him that, you know, the beauty of the quarter system is that you're going to take so many classes and you can really take your time with them. And so I think you don't have to go one way or another, right? Like you can always mix and have that balance. But generally, I would agree with Esther that there's so many, I feel like if you say core class, there's like already a stereotype thinking like, oh, this is gonna be about Apollo, or it's gonna be about like Marx, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of options within the core requirements, and so I would take a quarter by quarter, and not overwhelm oneself with like trying to plan a 4-year schedule, because I know people who have done that or tried to do that and it never works. So take it one quarter at a time, and do both, like explore your major options and take core classes.
Okay, so our next question's kind of interesting, and it's, what do you dislike the most about UChicago, and what can it do to improve?
Yeah, so I'll start with this one. I think the one thing, if I had to say anything, that I disliked the most about UChicago was that, and I think this is in large part like because we don't have like a huge sports culture or anything, but we as a campus don't tend to have like a lot of school spirit per se. I don't think there's like one thing that like really unifies the entire like 4 like classes here at a time, into being like, oh my god, like I love this about UChicago, like the whole school doesn't go out to any single event, and I think in that sense it's something I wish I had had during college, and something that I hope that UChicago can improve on. I guess if anything, like we're really bound together by a lot of like talks over like in the dining hall, like over the dining table about like different really cool things that people are working on or learned about or things like that. But I did wish that school spirit was like a bit better here.
Yeah, I think my comments are going to be somewhat similar. Not so much about school spirit, but I think there is sometimes a tendency in the culture for people to focus really a lot on academics and get quite stressed out and feed off of each other's stress. And I think as all of us have gotten older, I think that's become less of a problem. But overall, I think the best way to approach it is to take classes you're passionate about, so that it doesn't feel like you're overwhelming yourself. And also just sort of to take a breather. A lot of the professors, you know, maybe they assign a lot of work, but they really have the intention of helping you as much as possible. So like going to office hours can be really helpful to quell fear, and like talking to other students. And I think even though first year I found that culture could be a bit stressful, in the end I've made a lot of like my best friends here bonding over that experience.
Yeah, we've lived together since first year.
Yeah.
I also still live with my first year roommate.
Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so I actually did not really enjoy my time at UChicago, and panelists, don't freak out. I'm not sabotaging anything here, because a lot of the things that I didn't enjoy were not problems with the college, you know, like health problems that had nothing to do with it. So if it's someone who is not having a good time can realize that the problems they had were not really part of the college, that's a good thing. I'm going to the 2 sort of specific things that I can say, you know, were germane to the college's responsibilities. I'd say there's issues with administration, particularly in that like there's kind of a labyrinthine bureaucracy and difficulties in reaching some of your advisors. For example, in the sense that I have a 3.9 GPA, I'm like double majors, I've got honors, I'm on academic probation because of an error in the system right now. And that's not rare. Sorry, that is rare, but I've heard people have lots of problems with advisors and whatnot. So you gotta be careful of that. And then the other thing is just, this isn't even so much of a con, but just something that you should be aware of is that UChicago courses are pretty rigorous in the sense that we're going to go the extra mile to make sure you learn the material and maybe learn even more material than might be expected elsewhere. The example I give is I have a friend who's at Cornell University, which is a very like prestigious, also academically oriented university, who's studying biochemistry. Like that's his whole major. And I was in like OChem 1 and I asked him a question about something that we had to do on a problem set or a lab report. And he says, oh, that? We don't even go that far into depth. So, you know, there's some places where they're just like really going far into the weeds, which if you're interested in that can be great. But if you're not a huge fan of whatever that is, then that'll be a bit of a turnoff.
Thank you, panel, for sharing that. And that's one of the main reasons we really wanted to start this platform, is for everyone to share their own perspective, because everyone goes through college in their own way. And again, we're also not associated with any UChicago organization or any school whatsoever. So all of our panelists' stories and perspectives are their own. And this is a platform for them to share that. So this next one is, what has been your most memorable experience at UChicago? And we'll begin with Zarek.
Yeah, so I think one of my most memorable experiences here was involvement in extracurriculars. And in particular, there were like two that I like sunk all my time into. So one was a group that did like nonprofit consulting. So you would like work with like nonprofits in the local Chicago community as part of a class, and then as part of like a program afterwards. And then another was like a student-run think tank. So we did policy research with like local organizations in Chicago, both in the city and then also the state of Illinois. And like the involvement in extracurriculars was definitely like my favorite part of college, and definitely the most memorable experience. I think like freshman year, I was probably spending like, you know, most of my time in academics. And then by the end, like it's like close to graduation, it shifted to maybe like 50-50 or maybe like 60-40 in favor of extracurriculars. And that's just because like I found, you know, groups of other students who were like very interested in the same issues that I was. It was a place like to work on things that kind of got outside the university bubble, but also like help you like develop skills for kind of like very practical real world purposes later on. The one thing I would say that the downside of extracurriculars at UChicago is that they are super competitive in some limited areas. Some of them require like applications and like you going to info sessions and you doing like little interviews to join the extracurriculars, and they're abbreviated as RSOs, or registered student organizations here. And so like I think that culture can be a little intense and is probably in need of some disruption. But that being said, the organizations that I was a part of, like I just really loved and kind of, you know, got a lot of value out of.
I think my most memorable experiences pertain to that brought out the best in people. So for me, it was the vibrant class discussions, spring quarter, and, you know, just meeting people first level on the first level of the reg, which is like the Regenstein Library, our social hotspot, as sad as it is. But speaking more in specifically three experiences, I think there's a lot of times when I would be in class and there's so much vibrant discussion, insightful, intellectual, respectful discussion happening that I would leave the class with my like mind just blown and like so much serotonin like flowing out everywhere. And it like really, the people are so smart here, and those classes challenge you to think so hard. And for me, intellectual fulfillment has become such a rewarding, like it's been so rewarding and something that I've come to care deeply about, and that I hope to pursue, you know, forever in my life. But I would say like those vibrant discussions like really bring out the best in people, especially in like my social science philosophy classes. The second one was spring quarter. Seasonal depression is a very real thing, and coming from Southern California where I was spoiled by the sun and warmth 24/7, I did not understand what like seasonal blues were until I got to Chicago, and it hits you so hard. But then spring quarter, you know, sometimes it'd be 55 degrees and everyone's out in shorts and chilling on the quad and throwing frisbees, and it's like, oh, is this what it feels like to go to a state school with like where people are happy? Like, I don't know, there's just this stark difference, and it like everyone's just happy and saying hi and laying on blankets and what are those things called? Like, I forgot, like those things. Hammocks. Yeah, sorry. Everyone, like a lot of people are laying on hammocks. Some people bring out their dogs, and there's just so much happiness in the air during spring quarter. So that's always a great memory. First level at the reg. So a lot of people kind of do their studying at the reg. They also go there to socialize. Like sometimes I would go to another more quiet library to get things done. And then if I get bored or if I miss people, I would literally go to the first floor of the reg, and I would like make my social rounds where there's like at least 2 people that I would know and strike up a conversation with on the first floor. And they're always like such bursts of joy, because everyone's there to work and be productive, but everyone's kind of like suffering collectively. That sounds so sad, but I found a lot of joy in it. And so, yeah, it gave me a lot of happiness to just like find people serendipitously and have conversations spontaneously and unexpectedly.
I was originally going to talk only about extracurriculars, but Jane's mention of her academic discussions got me thinking that I should do both. So academically, honestly, Gen Chem was a really wild ride, as was OChem, and I just have so many stories of me doing terribly dumb things in the laboratory, which I will fondly reminisce about, even if I wouldn't recommend to try them at home. And then in terms of extracurricular stuff, I did a lot of Model UN stuff. Jane's also really active in that, perhaps more than me. But for those uninitiated into the Model UN world, it's like a model of the United Nations, but at UChicago, one of our organizations tends to take it a little further and a little farther from reality than the norm. And you get to sort of run your own committee set in a world or government of your choice. And doing that has been really fun for me and really fulfilling. On one hand, you do all sorts of research and you really understand the nitty gritty of whatever body you're investigating, and then you go to conference and execute it. And when it goes off without a hitch, or even with a few hitches, it's just so much fun.
Right, so for our last question, it's going to be about imposter syndrome, which I'm sure a lot of us have heard about during our first years. It's discuss some of your insecurities as an incoming frosh joining such a selective class.
Yeah, I'll start on this one. Honestly, first year was just a kind of wild ride. Everyone I talked to here, so I think Isabel explained about this a little previously, but our house that we come into is like randomly assigned, but it consists of like every year. So there's like first years, second years, third years, fourth years, all living kind of in the same space in the dorm. But getting to talk to a lot of even just like second years and third years about like everything that they're doing, they're all doing just such amazing stuff. Like there's this one girl who is growing like mini brains in like petri dishes in the lab, and I thought that was super cool. Super geeky about bio, by the way. And I think realizing that I didn't have like something that I was so passionate about and something that like would make me want to like jump out of bed every morning to do for the rest of my life, I guess was my insecurity. I guess I was just like trying to find myself, and in that first year was pretty hard. But I think going from year to year, like you realize that people find the research they want to do, the extracurriculars they want to like throw themselves into as a result of like being able to explore the different clubs and different student organizations and everything like that. It's going to be like a hard first year, I think, no matter where you go. I guess just know that it all gets better. There's a lot of support. Upperclassmen are always so willing to help you out, help you figure out like what your passion might be and things like that.
Yeah, I went to a high school with no grades, and so I think the academic rigor in my first quarter was a bit shocking to me. But I think that imposter syndrome is something that nearly every first year here faces. And as a result, people were really willing to step in and help me. And first year, I just had so many study groups that helped me like get through my classes. When I went back to the dining hall, it was all people from my house who were like often also in my classes, and were able to talk through issues at the table, or very willing to just help at any time. If I walk into the library, there's very quickly you get to know just people here, and
the library.
I would walk up randomly to someone who I knew was a physics major through a mutual friend, and they'd be willing to sit down and help me even though they had their own work. And so I think imposter syndrome is definitely something that's difficult, but it gets better over time. And I think the culture here is very collaborative. And I think kind of uniquely collaborative, to be honest, compared to like my friends' experiences at other schools. And so I think that the school does a good job of creating a support network.
Yeah, I would definitely second that last part. Like, I think UChicago is super collaborative. Is honestly one of the primary reasons I chose the school.
Yeah, everyone's so nice. We're all like suffering through classes, and we're really bonded by that suffering, as Jane mentioned. Lots of complaining, but complaining together, which is good.
All right, thank you for all your responses. We're going to move on to rapid fire questions, where we've compiled some of the shorter questions that were submitted. And the first one is, what's your favorite first year class that you took?
This was like so long ago. I'm so sorry, guys. We're all seniors, and
I can go. I took a political science elective my first year. That was a class about, it was a seminar where you dissected like declassified CIA documents, and then you wrote papers about them. That was like the entire class. Taught by Austin Carson, called The Secret Side of International Politics, would recommend.
Mine was a class called Urban Design Studio, and it was actually a project we did for the city of Chicago, where the city identified under-resourced plots of land in Chicago, and we kind of came up with urban interventions recommendations for how they can utilize the space to better, to economically develop that neighborhood. And so I thought that was really cool.
One of my favorite classes first year, sounds a little bit less exciting than those two, was my calculus class. And it's part of the core. And I just met very good friends in it. And the teacher was a grad student. And I think this speaks to the culture of collaboration here. Everyone in the class worked together. The teacher hosted office hours several times a week to help us through. And like, we've even all stayed in touch with him. Like, before the pandemic happened, we got dinner with him a couple weeks ago.
Oh, so cute.
Yeah. So I don't know, even your core classes can be like, I think, really memorable.
That was definitely the best answer so far.
Wait, I thought yours was really cool, Eric. Why didn't you tell me about this before? I would have taken it.
He was my social professor. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's trying to be serious here. I think my favorite, I'm pre-med, so I had a bit of a rough first year with like Gen Chem and everything. But I actually really enjoyed media aesthetics. We had this one field trip to the Smart Museum, which is on campus. So I don't know why I didn't go before. But getting to like choose a sculpture or like a piece of art and like write about what you think it is, without looking at like the description on the like piece, I thought was a really cool idea. There was a lot of like discussion about like your perspective versus like the artist's perspective. Yeah, super academic, but I thought that was really cool.
So I'm pre-med too. I'd say Gen Chem 3 or Russian, which are very disparate courses, but both of them were linked in the fact that the professors were like memes in the nicest possible way, and they were busting their butts to make sure that you really learned the material and did well. And it's like also fun when kids will light their fume hoods on fire and stuff like that. It's a good time.
Awesome. So for our next question, we have, what's your favorite place to study at UChicago? Where's your favorite place to study?
For me, definitely the Reg, which is I think the biggest library on campus. Although there are a lot of, I studied abroad last year, and there was one library at the university that I studied at in London. And there are so many places to study on UChicago's campus that like, it's not something I realized that we're really lucky to have. But yeah, definitely the rag, which is the biggest one, and where you walk in and you know like 1,000 people there, and it, as Jane mentioned, it does have, I think it lifts your spirits while studying.
I think I might be kind of unique in saying this. I think all of the other panelists like studying in the rag. I'm not sure about Nikolai. But everyone here wants to study with you, which I'm like super uncomfortable with because I like lead the entire group astray when I do that. So I mainly study in my room. And the dorm was always like really quiet. We have like quiet hours during like finals week and like reading period to make sure that everyone has like the peace and quiet that they need to study. All the dorms also have like these like really cool study rooms with like, actually, I don't know if it's in the other dorms, but at least like the dorm I lived in, where like one wall was complete like whiteboard and like you could like write out like OChem like reactions and things like that and like work with other people, or you could just study in there by yourself.
I think my favorite is John Crayar Library, and it's because fewer people are there and the computers are huge. Like they're like $5,000 Macs with like $10,000 processors. It's so quick. Yeah, the rag, I go to be social. If I need to get stuff done, I go to Crayar. I would highly recommend. The computers are amazing.
I would say Mansueto, which is a subset of the reg. It's like a giant glass bubble. It's very like airy and light.
Okay, I'll actually back Esther up. I study in my room. I get intimidated by the library and all the studious people there.
Yeah, I also lost my ID for like 2 years, so I couldn't get into the library. But I think, sorry, Nikolai, if I interrupted you.
So we can move on to the next question. And basically it's, what's your biggest regret in college?
Probably my biggest regret was making a 4-year plan for all my courses at the very beginning, and then having that be totally disrupted by a variety of factors. I think Jane mentioned this at the beginning of the call, something you should not do, and that is precisely what I did, and it did not work out well. Not that it worked out poorly, but it's just unnecessary.
I personally, I had so many interests when I came to college and didn't know what to do. I wish I had explored more of those. The U Chicago has a lot of really interesting courses, and I think I got caught up a bit in like trying to finish my credits as quickly as possible and trying to finish my major and like look employable as well. But I think my favorite classes here have been the ones that I've just took for fun as well. Like taking Russian language, which I can back up. The teachers are amazing in that department. And like, yeah, so just pursuing more of my interests.
I think my biggest regret has to be, I guess it would be like not taking the time to, what's the saying, like smell the roses. I think being pre-med, I like came in here and I was like, oh my God, by the end of third year, like I have to apply to med school. Like the whole entire like first 3 years, I think for me were just like putting out small fires like everywhere. Like, oh my God, like I got a 43% on my like Gen Chem midterm. The average was like a 41, but so it's fine.
I remember that from first year.
It was so traumatizing. It was like my first midterm in college. But looking back now, I wish I had like taken the time to even just like go to parties, like go out to brunch with my roommates, which I did, just not super often. Go to downtown more. Chicago is actually an amazing city, and I think not many students explore it enough. And I think that would be my biggest regret.
So I went into college with the conviction that I must leave without having any regrets. So I am very lucky to say I don't have any, because I took as many classes as I could. I met as many professors as I could. I went downtown and beyond downtown as often as I could. And so I think going into college with that mentality and reminding yourself at the start of every quarter, like I must not leave with any regrets, is a very efficient way to maximize your college experiences.
I would mainly second what Belle and Esther said, in the sense that I really wish I'd spent more time taking classes that I enjoyed or was interested in, rather than the ones I felt I had to take for some reason. And then also just, the smelling the roses or exploring. Like, it's college, you have time to do things and kind of escape consequences in a certain way. Like, you can join an RSO, you can start a business in a certain way where there's like support from the university. Like, you can kind of do whatever, try something new, go wild. And I think it's important for people to do that in the college space when they have the availability. And then I guess I would also just say, I wish I hadn't tried to game the system playing with like administrative matters, because that came back to bite me.
So we'll have one more previously submitted question, and then after this one, we're going to transition to audience Q&A, where everyone can unmute themselves and ask questions of their own. The last question we have is, can you talk a little bit about house culture and the differences between the different houses?
Hopper is by far the best house on campus. I'm just going to say this now. I think each house has kind of its own unique culture. I don't know if this will be true anymore, just because there's like a new dorm being built, but North, the dorm, always had like a lot of the athletes, because they are able to like register early, and so they get like the newest dorm on campus. So like in IMs, like they were always like the best teams and the teams to beat. I don't know. I love house culture. Like all the fourth and third years and second years when we came in were so welcoming. They like helped us move in, like literally like carried our boxes in for us. And yeah, like they were always there to like offer advice, kind of regardless of if you wanted it or not. And yeah, house culture is just amazing. I think it really felt like a second home here. And it really made my transition into UChicago a lot easier.
I think also like the houses are assigned based on the dorms that you list in your, I don't remember what it is, but they send an application out and you can rank your top 3 choices, and there's a brief survey to pair you with a roommate. Get that in early so that you have as much choice as possible, but I kind of think that they do a good job of sorting you into places where you best fit, and that people sort of self-select. So some of the older dorms on campus have a particular culture that's somewhat different from some of the newer dorms, but I think kind of where you want to live says something maybe about your personality, and so that it's a bit self-selecting, and that you'll probably end up with a house culture that you like, because I think all of them are consistently good, but they do have different niches.
What are the quirky ones? BJ. Is Hitchcock a dorm? Okay.
I wasn't in a quirky one.
Yeah, we were not in a quirky one.
But
it was kind of quirky. Yeah. We had a dog.
I think it's what you make of it. I mean, like, so I was in North and one of the newer house, and I was like the first person to be occupying my room ever. And so it was a chance to really create our own identity. However, like I'm pretty introverted, and like as much like the day is pretty draining, and at the end of the day I want to like get into my room and like not talk to anyone. So I think like if you wanted house culture to be there, it was, and if I wanted to go on a house trip, like I could go and know people and feel comfortable going on it. But most of the time I didn't want to participate, and that was fine. Nobody faulted me for it. And so I want to say most houses are what you make of it. And so whatever you want to get out of it, like I think you'll find it if you look for it.
And I would absolutely second that, in the sense that, sure, there are defined or semi-defined houses like BJ, Snell, Snitchcock are more quirky on average, but it's really what you bring to the table. And I can vouch to that, in the sense that my house first year, we were in a house in South. There were just some really bad apples that year, not because of who like it's just random chance, some people you get who are going to be doing some bad things. But then when people came back for the second year and we sort of rebooted our house culture, and it was people who were already really invested in the house life, then it was much better than before. So like there's pre-established culture, but then there's also what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Like, I think that was a pretty good summary. I guess I'll just second what others have said, that, picking the building can still determine the overall culture. But definitely it's like the subgroups that you form within the house that kind of determines like your daily interactions.
All right, so that concludes our prepared questions. We know we weren't able to answer all of your submitted questions, but we tried to include the ones that were most commonly requested. If you have any more questions, please feel free to use the raise hand feature on Zoom, or drop it in the group chat. And you can also private message one of the moderators if you want to anonymize the question.
So the mute feature is off now. So if you have a question, please use the raise hand.
You could just ask too. We're all pretty chill people, if you can't tell.
I think we all know each other in one way or another.
Yeah, these are all my friends, recruiting wise.
We do have one from Sarah that says, what is the surrounding area like? Feel free to just jump in on this.
Hyde Park is an amazing neighborhood. I love Hyde Park so much. First, I live 3 minutes away from Trader Joe's by walking distance. I think that's incredible. I'll never have that luxury ever again, probably. But also there's like, people are like, oh, it's such a college neighborhood. And I don't think that's true. I think people who say it's such a, like, yeah, there are college neighborhoods, but if you like go outside the boundaries of the university, like you see so many local South Side residents. And I feel like it's a city in its own, in that there's so many commercial amenities, from grocery stores to bars to like restaurants and cafes and everything, and there's a bustling like 53rd Street corridor where there's Target and Starbucks and Whole Foods. So you can find so many things in Hyde Park, but also like the neighborhood itself is so walkable, and it's right by the lakeshore, and so Promontory Point is a place that a lot of people love to go for walks or just to have a picnic in the park. And I feel like there's so many different worlds within one neighborhood, and I think it's like really so beautiful.
Jade's making me wish I had explored more during my 4 years here, because I thought it was like a total like college town, honestly. But I'm like a huge like food person. Like I really love, I'm just gonna say it, I like bougie food. So I go downtown a lot to eat. So in that sense, I think it's like slightly inconvenient. There's like good places around Hyde Park. But I guess they get old after a while. And I really miss sushi. I'm from California. Miss poke bowls.
I will say to anyone who hasn't visited the campus, like we're in the city of Chicago, but it's not like downtown Chicago. Yeah. It's like
we're pretty far from downtown.
Yeah, I mean we're not so
like
far.
It's like a 1 hour like train ride.
It's like 40-minute train ride, I would say, to get downtown. And even less if you're driving, but so it does have a, like, I'm from New York, I live in downtown Manhattan, so to me it does have like a smaller, more like
town
quaint
feel.
Yeah, kind of like town feel, which I think is really nice for college, and especially in spring, like walking around is really nice. And also I think people come with the preconception that the neighborhood's really not safe. I haven't personally ever felt unsafe.
It's gotten a lot better
here.
Like way better,
and I feel comfortable walking around, and so yeah, I'll just say that as well.
Yeah, I think to add on to that point, I think there is a wide perception of the South Side of Chicago in general is really dangerous. And especially in the area around Chicago, that is like way blown out of proportion by the media, right? And so like I think in reality, it's like not really not that bad. And then in addition to that, Hyde Park has also been, for better or for worse, become a very gentrified neighborhood. And so like, it has higher amenities. There are obviously, lots of horrible downsides to that effect. But if like those are the concerns that your parents have, I think they're way blown out of proportion in general.
Shall we move on to the next question? So the next question is, how do you deal with homesickness?
I rarely felt homesick. Hopefully my parents aren't watching this. Yeah, I don't know. I think just, I do feel quite supported in the community here, and in the friends I've made here. I think if you're someone who's lived really close to home your whole life and has, I don't know, I think that's probably something to consider if you're thinking about moving to Chicago. But as I've said before, I think like the culture here can be really supportive. And there's also ways to stay in touch. We have long breaks. If you're able to go home, that's like a time to do so. Calling your parents, sort of just simple things.
Yeah, also you're like stuck with your parents at home in September because everyone else has gone back to school.
I was able to find cheap tickets very frequently to go to Southern California. Like once I found $121 basic economy tickets to fly from Chicago to Orange County, which is amazing. So I honestly, if it got too bad, I just went home. Seasonal, the challenge of the winter is you can go 3 weeks without seeing sun consecutively. And so if I desperately needed the recharge, I would go. But also my best friend lives in Wisconsin, and her house was only a train right away. So I also had that luxury of being able to escape for a day or two over the weekend at her house if I needed to. But other than that, I think seeking small joys that remind you of home. So there's this cafe on 53rd Street called 53rd Cafe 53, and I would love to just sit down there and eat desserts, because that made me, it's the small joys that you find that I think reduce the homesickness, even if it's just a little bit at a time. So I would say doing whatever you can to find small joys and be able to re-find them again whenever you do feel homesick.
I second the flight thing, by the way. Southwest is your best friend here. Midway Airport is so close by, and it's basically like a Southwest hub. My boyfriend's at USC, and I've been able to find $50 plane tickets one way, which is amazing. You have to book them super far out, and they're super inconvenient, but you can find them.
I will also say you adapt over time. I think everyone can feel a little homesick first year, but as you become more embedded in your life here, and I think that does go away over time.
All right.
Great.
Next.
So we're going to close things off real quick. We will have some extra time after the session with some panelists who will be staying after to answer the additional questions. Just for the sake of time and out of respect for everyone who has to leave, no pressure to stay at all. Just wanted to take this time, since it's almost the hour mark, to say thank you to our panelists for coming and taking some time out of their day to answer these questions. So thank you so much for helping us create a sense of community during a pretty stressful time. Just also wanted to say that feel free to follow us on CollegeSide Chats. We're going to have a few more events like this coming up, and we also have YouTube video recordings of our previous ones if you're deciding between UChicago and other schools. And also, yeah, so we hope everyone stays safe and healthy. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Again, we're going to have some panelists stay after, so to answer the remaining questions. And welcome to UChicago. Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you all here.
So we can move on to the next question in the meantime then.
Okay. On average, how many classes do you take per quarter, and how would you describe the workload? Oh, you take 3 to 4 classes. Sorry, I'm answering all these questions, guys. So you take 3 to 4 classes per quarter.
You can also take 5 if you want to, but that's too much, honestly.
Yeah. Work seems like a pretty heavy workload for most people. I'm pre-med. I cruise by basically 3 classes a quarter. So that was kind of fun. It's pretty chill. No, it's not. I lied. It's not chill at all. It's hard work. I think 3 classes is better. 4 classes is a lot.
I've personally taken 4 classes pretty much each term until senior spring, where I was hoping to go out more. But yeah, I think 4 is manageable. And it's also, people try not to stack really like 4 really difficult courses in the same term, but it can be pretty rigorous.
All right.
I also think you could definitely have a chill quarter if you only take 3 classes and pick the right classes, right? Like you can always navigate the system to find classes that are a bit less intense, have less testing requirements, etc.
Great. So the next question we have is, the first year sounds really difficult. Have any of you felt like transferring because you were too overwhelmed? If anyone's comfortable.
So I guess I'll be the resident negative Nancy in this panel. First year, I'm going to first address the part about first year. First year is tough, I think, almost everywhere you go, in that you just need to figure out how to study, how to do college life. And for me, it just took probably the first 2 years to really figure out like what was my personal routine of how I needed to study, how I needed to set myself up to succeed. And so once I was able to do that, things went really well. But like up to that, yeah, I was having a pretty rough time. And so there were times when I considered like transferring, but my transfer app didn't go through. So I still finished and I was still successful at UChicago. So like it's still a success story no matter how you look at it.
Great. So the next, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have maybe a different answer to this, which is that I never considered transferring once I was here, but coming in, I was definitely like initially worried about kind of like the student culture and like how nerdy it was, which is kind of weird because like I personally am like super nerdy and awkward. But like I was just like worried about it and pretty apprehensive about that culture. And once I got here, like I like loved it, and people were super friendly, and you can find diversity types of friends to make. So just an additional thought.
What's your, oh,
I was just gonna say, like, it is very rigorous and can feel overwhelming. I think looking back on it as a 4th year, that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for, because I think UChicago has really pushed me to be my best, whether that just be academics, but also my extracurriculars here. It can be overwhelming, but I think it does definitely get easier over time as well. So maybe that's something to think about if that's the type of environment you would be happy in and thrive in.
Next question. What's your personal typical day like? Well, these days I wake up at like 2 p.m.
5 p.m. yesterday.
I like fell into a coma yesterday, guys. I slept 12 hours. Something happened. I don't know what. But during like the school year, I try to pick classes that are all like after like 11 a.m. So I like wake up like 20 minutes before class, get dressed, everything, run to class, like book it, go to classes, buy some lunch at the cafe, come home, talk to my roommates. I've been watching a lot of Wipeout, which has been really nice. But yeah, it's a pretty chill day usually. I don't think I'm too stressed. I think I procrastinate a lot, and that's the issue. But yeah.
I don't know if I have a bit of a different experience. I guess before quarantine, like I would wake up pretty early, and maybe this is more consistent with the average person. No offense. But wake up maybe around like 7 or 8.
That's ambitious.
Not average.
Okay, maybe not. I don't know, work a little bit before class, go to class, study at least for a couple hours during weekdays. A lot of us have part-time jobs. I worked 15 hours a week about, which on top of the course load can be a lot. But I would say that there is at least a couple hours each day to either hang out. As a senior, I often there's a bar on campus. Go there after school and hang out for a bit, and then go home. Jimmy's or
like
slightly off campus. But,
I think I wake up a little more on average, like depending on when my first class starts, like 8:30 to 10-ish. And then I go to class, and then usually like I have 1 or 2 classes in the morning, and then I have like my part-time job, and then I would like have extra hours to hang out with friends or study, and then I would have another evening class or like late afternoon class, and then like make dinner, and then like study again. And so I mean, I'm sure people will say all the time, like, there's no average day, but that's my average day.
I think my average routine was, do morning things, go to classes. Then usually like at night, I would go to the reg to either like work on problem sets with groups, study groups, or like have meetings for student clubs. And that was like pretty average for most days.
Oh yeah, I forgot about student clubs. All the meetings are like in the evening.
Guess my average days would either be split into me lounging around and doing almost nothing, or studying the entire day. One or the other.
All right. Which residence hall has the easiest access to the main campus and lecture hall? Which residence hall is the farthest, and which is closest? Do you guys know if the new dorm is going to be finished for this incoming class?
Supposed to be, but who knows if, I don't know if on-campus life will resume by fall quarter is the unfortunate thing about like incoming class. And so you guys will have another option as a dorm, and that's not, so let me just answer the question. I would say Snell Hitchcock has the easiest access to classes, but Max Pilevsky is like half a block away. I think that's the most ideal because it's like a 5-minute walk to the quad, but also like a 1-minute walk to the dining hall and a 1-minute walk to the reg. North is like half a block away from Max Pilevsky, so it's like add 3 minutes to everything. But they shut down all of the residence halls that are like more than a 10-minute walk from the quad. I would say iHouse is an exception because it's like literally in the middle of nowhere. But even that is like a 10-minute walk to campus, I think.
The new dorm seems kind of far though.
Yeah. But it's like there's going to be a dining hall right next to it. So if you want like a central location, I would say Max is your best bet for that.
Yeah, they also have like in-suite like bathrooms and showers, which is really nice. I live there.
All the buildings are fine except iHouse. Just avoid iHouse at all costs.
Not at all.
So much further than the other buildings. There's no dining hall next to it. Everything else is like pretty okay.
In my 4 years, I have never been to iHouse.
Yeah, same. But I have heard stories from it.
I think it's kind of nice, but
like, you know, at UChicago, there's like a general sense of like collective suffering that we like bond through. At iHouse, like you take it to a whole other level. It's like, yeah, we go to UChicago. Yeah, we're in iHouse. Like we have nothing by us, and it's really kind of funny. But I mean, people make the most of it. So if you end up there, it's not the end of the world. Like you'll have great people in RAs to guide you through your transition. But I would not rank it your first anything.
I got an opportunity to be a resident assistant third year, but when it turned out I killed my interview at iHouse, I turned it down. But no matter where you go, it's going to be a good culture because they really do try to fit you to the house as best as possible.
All right. I don't know if anyone on here is pre-med, but if you have any questions, I know people have concerns about being pre-med at UChicago because the grade inflation's not as high. Let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some grade
minor
inflation. I mean, my first midterm was 43. I think that's all the questions. I can leave my email if you, what is your opinion on being pre-med at UChicago? Well, there's 2 of us here. So, honestly, first year was pretty hard. I think you start to realize that the curve isn't as bad as everyone said it would be. Most classes are like curved to like a B+. Just because like they know like a lot of like the Gen Chem class, a lot of the OChem class is pre-med. There's definitely ways, I know this is terrible to say because you really should take classes that you're interested in, but I did find ways to like kind of balance out the difficulty of pre-med classes with like slightly easier classes, and just make sure that like my GPA is up to par for med school applications. Nikolai, do you have anything?
Yeah, I guess I'd comment, a lot of my first year was pre-med classes and the same for second year. And it was just hard to be taking, you know, kind of rigorous classes. Like no matter where you go, OChem is not going to be easy unless you're a super genius. And until I just really knew how to study for myself, those classes were kind of hard. But so like when I wound up in physics, my third year, which I was horrendous at in high school, I actually was really good at it in college, simply because I just got better at studying. And that's something you'll have to learn for yourself. And then I guess the other thing I would sort of note about pre-med, and this may be a sort of weird take, but I feel like chemistry is like a college course that you kind of have to take. Like it's an experience. When I went to college, I was like, man, that's like what I hear about on TV, like chem courses. And like I think it was very formative in a lot of ways for me, like taking these large lecture classes, but you had to do a lot of studying on your own, but you also had sort of like the TA experience in your small section, and you had lab work as well. So I think it was also just a really unique part of the college experience that you might not get otherwise. And that could just totally be me being weird. But I also do want to put that out there.
And I just want to say that, I don't know if Nikolai will agree with me, but I felt quite supported as a pre-med. Everyone's really collaborative. I like got the solution guides to like every homework from like other people, which I don't know if I should be saying. But it's definitely manageable. People really help each other through the course. You're going to learn everything at a much deeper level. And like, the professors are really going to want you to understand everything, which I think is a good thing in the long run. But it's definitely manageable. Like there's honestly nothing to worry about.
I'm not a pre-med, but we all have to take a certain amount of STEM courses. And originally I came in as a physics major, which is it's part of the pre-med core, right? Or yeah.
It's part of our gen ed.
But there's also like, I don't know if other schools have this, but my sister who goes to Brown, from what I can tell, like there's less access to tutoring on campus, but each night from like 7 to 11, there's tutors for the core classes, which often overlaps with a lot of the pre-med courses, which I utilized a lot in my first 2 years here. So I think there's also like consistent help available.
All right, any other questions? I will leave my email if anyone has questions about being pre-med. There's honestly no anxiety at all. Don't even worry. Actually,
Or there is anxiety, but you find ways to manage them. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Back on the transfer question, like, yeah, I think everyone thinks about transferring, and I even like started a Common App for Columbia after I spent my first summer in New York. I was like, I want to be here. But you find more classes you like, you find more people you like along the way. The first year is all about finding, like, knowing where you are in the learning curve and being okay with that, and like looking for a future where like you'll know better and you'll be better off for it. And so patience and diligence is something important to have.
Like my like point of view, I think, is a lot from like having gone through this entire thing. So I definitely had like, I was putting out small fires like everywhere, like running around, like screaming during my pre-med experience. But I think you do realize afterwards that there is a lot of support and a lot of like your professors want to see you succeed. They don't want you to like fail out of school. So if you do reach out during office hours, during like just emailing them about questions, like they're always so receptive. The Brown question. So Bella said, since your sister goes to Brown, what differences do you see between the two experiences? She actually came to visit, and she did want to come here.
Why not you? Okay. Yeah, my sister visited both UChicago and Brown, and I will preface this with that she went to a really, really rigorous high school, which students who come to UChicago after say that UChicago is way easier. And so she wanted to relax a little bit in college. And that's not to say that Brown's been easy, but it, I think, is a little less rigorous. And I think part of that is because the quarter system is a lot of classes per term. And Brown, I think it's a semester system. So I think the pace of learning is a bit slower. I won't say, though, I think both are like fantastic institutions. And I think UChicago, you explore a lot through the other big difference that I've seen is like you explore here a lot through the core. Brown obviously has like significantly less requirements, if any, to the best of my knowledge. And so she's been able to explore maybe more
about her major.
Yeah, more in depth in her major, but maybe has done less breadth overall. I'll leave my email though, because I'm a little hesitant to speak to the whole experience of Brown. So you can reach out to me at iurusso@uchicago.edu and I can like talk to my sister and get more specific comparisons between the two if that's something you'd like to learn more about.
We both seem happy. So
yeah, she is. I'm happy here. She is very, very happy there as well. My sister's also a very intense person, so she makes everything maybe a little more rigorous than it needs to be. So she has found a way to make Brown intense.
Also shamelessly plugged our YouTube recording.
I was about to say, this is really shameless, Harley.
Yeah, feel free to watch that.
So some people online talk about grade deflation. Is that real at UChicago? I don't know what grade deflation is. Like, thinking back on it now, like, what does that mean?
I don't think grades are deflated at UChicago.
Aren't they all inflated because you're all graded on a curve?
I think there's a lack of inflation, but there's not like active deflation, like Princeton, right? Like they have like policies there across departments that like only X percentage of students can get A's. To my knowledge, I don't think we have those, at least the departments that I'm familiar with. But we also, like, UChicago also does not inflate grades like some of the other Ivies, or rumored to. So I think it's just like neutral.
I think Harley goes to Yale. Don't you?
I have no comment on that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, most of my STEM classes that I've been graded, I'm a social science major. I would say that the grading's been very reasonable in that and perhaps even on the more generous side. For my STEM courses, it's usually curved to a B+. I think that's like a pretty reasonable like curve. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. So it's definitely possible to do well in those courses. And I wouldn't say that professors are out to lower your GPA.
I think one way to summarize like how grades are done here is that you have to earn your A's. I don't think I've ever gotten an A in a class that I didn't deserve. Like I think I got effortlessly, if that makes sense. Like you really earn your grades here. So I think here like a B really does mean good. A C really does mean average. An A really does mean excellent. And I don't think they have, it might differ by a department, but in the social sciences, they didn't like actively try to deflate your grades, but you have to earn grades.
Awesome. So does anyone have any other questions or concerns or anything like that?
Yeah, feel free to email us as well. We didn't get to touch much upon like too much in depth on what we do outside of class, but there's a lot of stuff to do at UChicago. It's really fun. Research labs are really good. They're all really welcoming of students, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we'll also include the recording of this in the follow-up email and everything too.
I think we all looked. I think I look terrible.
I have. We can make it a podcast.
That would be great.
That's what happened for our first one. I messed up the recording, so it's like a podcast now. But everyone looks great. If we don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and close off the call then. Thank you very much to our panel again for taking some time out of your days to do this. Thank you everyone for the thank yous. That helps.
Bye.